Outputting our coverage. It's what we do.
That's all we do every Thursday
At 5:30. College football.
College football.
Mountain West Conference.
Doesn't matter.
SEC
Is all that matters.
Nick Saban
Is crazy.
Yeah.
And that's all. Let's start the show.
Good evening, faithful listeners. Welcome into yet another exciting edition of Outputting Our Coverage, coming to you on the heels of one of the worst Iron Bowls in history.
Or the best, depending on which side you're on.
Yes, depending on which side you're on. We will certainly talk about the big news in Auburn, the coaching situation. We got that coming up a little bit later on in the show. We will hit on the SEC Championship, Alabama and Georgia, some other championship games as well this weekend. The Pick 10 has been extended another week to give you an opportunity to increase your standings.
Or decrease.
Increase your standings.
Right.
But first, as we always do, good calls and bad calls. Bad calls first this week.
Okay, bad calls first. But first, I want to call out this extension. I really think it's just because you're just 3 games behind me, and you want to catch up this week. So
that has nothing to do with it
sure
at
it
all.
doesn't. Okay. My bad call was definitely Clemson. I thought they were a different team. They've been kind of racking up the points. South Carolina, we all thought with the player who shall never be named going down that they would be worse. But Clemson just kind of laid an egg, or South Carolina took it to them, one or the other. I don't know.
Yeah, I do enjoy watching Dabo Swinney lose, and I also enjoy watching the things that Steve Spurrier says after he beats Dabo Swinney. He's always a lot of entertainment value there.
Oh, yeah.
So I forget what he said this time. It was something along the lines of, I don't know, for some reason when we play Clemson, they just don't seem to play very well.
Right.
Something like that.
Yeah.
So.
Dabo Swinney, another name floating around the Auburn job. So.
Yeah, I would be very surprised to see that one happen. But you never know. All right, my bad call. Florida State got rocked by a Florida team that has been puzzling us all season. Very difficult to figure out. We're going to talk about them probably a little bit later on in the show as well. But Florida State pretty much doing what Florida State does every year.
Choking at the end.
Choking. Just, they're masters of the choke job.
Yeah, good job coming out last week and talking about how you should be considered for the national championship.
Yep, that's what we call a curse, a jinx.
Yeah, guess what? No, you shouldn't.
The Florida State Choconoles.
That's a good one. Typically, I've always heard criminals, but Choconoles is good.
They've applied for a name change, I guess.
Okay.
So we'll see.
Well, that's fair.
All right, good calls. There were some.
A couple. My good call was Ohio State beating Michigan. Now, they beat them narrowly, but
still counts.
Really, Ohio State has not won a game that hasn't been narrowly.
Yeah, and that's the crazy thing about all this. They're undefeated, which I think people are just completely forgetting about because
it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Yeah, they can't even play in their conference's championship game this week, although they were named winners of their division. They are allowed to be winners of their whatever leaders, legends division that they're in.
Why would you do that?
I don't know. It doesn't make any sense, but it is true.
Okay.
And it's just interesting to think about the hypotheticals with all of this. Of course, you can argue that maybe Ohio State should have taken their 1-year self-imposed bowl ban last year.
Right.
And if they had done that, then they would probably be playing in the BCS championship.
Maybe.
I mean, you don't know.
It's
hypothetical, but
now would they play Nebraska or would they play Wisconsin?
See, that's the thing. I have no idea how the Big Ten divisions work.
Right.
I think they just randomly draw teams out of a hat before the start of every season.
You're a legend. You're a leader.
And see, the crazy thing about it is that they couldn't even just write L on the pieces of paper that they pull out because you still don't know.
Exactly, right.
And you couldn't just write LE either.
No.
You still wouldn't know because your divisions are so stupidly named.
It's the worst division ever.
Awful. Big Ten, you have long been dead to us, but just thinking about it, you're even deader to us now.
So much deader.
I'm supposed to give a good call as well, I guess. Got a little bit off track there. I'm going to go with the Ole Miss Rebels. The Hugh Freeze Rebel Resurgence.
Or as some know them, as that team up there.
Yes, that team up north, as is Dan Mullen's favorite saying. They maybe should start calling them Uncle. I don't know. Maybe that's...
They have had problems with them.
They have, and I wasn't too surprised by this. Ole Miss needed this win to become bowl eligible, so they can write themselves a ticket to the Independence Bowl in one of the worst cities in America now. So that'll be fun for them. But Ole Miss really looks like a team on the rise at this point, and I think
so.
Maybe Mississippi State exposed a little bit more as taking advantage of an easy schedule at the beginning of the year.
Definitely, and we kind of talked about this when we had Garrett Burke on here in the show that no one heard, that he was thinking maybe Mississippi State could win out after LSU or after Alabama. Not so much. They kind of went downhill, kind of trended down towards where we thought they'd be.
Yeah, it will be really interesting to me to see what happens with Dan Mullen. I mean, certainly I don't think he's going to get fired, but
No.
he's kind of a strange coach in the sense that I know his name will still be thrown around for other jobs this year, and I'm wondering if maybe he's kind of seeing that things are starting to slow back down and maybe he jumps somewhere else. Who knows?
I think he likes it at Mississippi State. I really do think you put Dan Mullen in a different situation, and he takes that team to 10 wins within the first couple years.
Yeah, there's no doubt he's a good coach. He's a good recruiter. He's taken Mississippi State far above where they normally are.
Oh, yeah.
So it'll be
Kind of like a James Franklin.
Yeah, kind of like a James Franklin. We might talk about him a little bit later on in the show as well. But right now, we're going to take a quick break. On the other side, we're talking SEC Championship here on Outputting Our Coverage.
It's time for SEC Preview. SEC, Big 10, Big 12, 12 can't count. SEC, college football robber barons. SEC, yeah, they're big, they're fast, they're strong.
And Missouri and Texas A&M as well.
Yeah, SEC Preview.
Here we go.
It's time
Okay,
for
we are
SEC
back.
Preview.
It is now time to talk about what we were just referring to over the break as the de facto national championship /
Who's going to make the rest of the country cry?
yes, bowl.
Right.
Yes. So
I think it should change to that whole thing.
I think so as well. Sponsored by FedEx, presented by Papa John's, giving away 2millionfreepizzas.com.
Or 17, depending on who you listen to.
Yeah. I don't
Peyton.
know. Interesting. Did you know Peyton Manning just bought a ton of Papa John's pizza franchises in Denver?
I did not know that.
He did, yeah. And this was right before Denver legalized marijuana. Greatest move ever.
I think so. I
Yeah.
think Peyton Manning is going to do just fine after football.
I think he is going to be an even richer man.
Maybe a market analyst.
Yes.
Well, he needs to be with all these reports that he gave $5 million to the Tennessee program when he
Really?
was there. Yeah.
Interesting.
Told them to fix that situation.
Still couldn't get him John Gruden, though. could he?
That's right. I don't think so.
All right. So, Alabama, Georgia. Probably people in the media not giving Georgia quite enough credit about how competitive I expect this game to be.
Oh yeah, I think these teams are extremely similar, especially on the offensive side. You have the number one passer as far as efficiency goes in Aaron Murray with Georgia. Number 2 guy, any guesses?
I'm going to go with A.J. McCarron.
A.J. McCarron on the other side.
He was number 1 for a while.
He was number 1 for a while. Then he threw a pick, and I think that got him. Then you have the running back tandems. You've got Alabama's running back tandem with Yeldon, and then you've got the bread truck.
Or the guy who invented the spin move.
Yo, if you listen to Vern, maybe. But they have combined for like 1,840 yards and 27 touchdowns. Georgia's running back tandem, 1,820 yards for 23 touchdowns. I mean, it's very similar numbers.
Yeah. Of course, Torrey Gurley and Keith Marshall for Georgia's running back tandem there. A little bit less experience. Of course, T.J. Yeldon, a freshman, but Eddie Lacy got a little bit more experience for Alabama. I would look at it this way. I would say overall, Georgia probably has more star power as far as star players go, but I think Alabama is better coached.
I would agree with that.
So,
especially on the defensive end.
Right, especially on the defensive side. Georgia, we mentioned before the season, they have like an all-star cast on defense. Some really top-notch talent. Bakari Rambo, Jarvis Jones, those guys, excellent players.
Oh, yeah.
But,
and his name is Rambo.
Yeah, I mean, you just expect him to be running around with a machine gun shooting at wide receivers.
I expect Rambo to take somebody's head off. I do not expect to go around and just club somebody.
That was one of the most painful pieces of television I've ever seen.
Right.
When he started. I know people are probably surprised I was still watching at that point, but it was that was rough. That just kind of added insult to injury. But anyways, it's kind of perplexing that at times this season Georgia's defense with all that star power really was not able to get the job done. But as of late, they've looked a lot more solid. Granted, the competition at the end of the year was not the best.
Right. After Florida, they finished with Ole Miss 6-6, at Auburn 3-9, against Georgia Southern, not even a Division I team, and then versus Georgia Tech 6-6.
Right.
So not very impressive.
It's difficult to read too much into that, but I think you can say safely that Georgia's defense has improved. They match up well against a team like Alabama. I think, like you said, the two teams are very similar, and what I expect to get out of this one is a game that looks a lot like the Alabama-LSU game.
I think so, but I think it'll be higher scoring. Both offenses are better than the Alabama and LSU offenses that came into this game last year. Alabama's definitely has taken a 180, and you really need to look at the offensive coordinator and give him a lot of credit for that. I think a lot of credit for the Georgia defense coming on strong is going to have to go to the core players who were out for 4 games.
Yeah.
They're finally all together. You've got 11 guys on the field who are used to playing with each other. They got some time and experience under their feet. I think everybody knows their role now. I think that's one of the reasons you see the defense getting better.
I think you could also make an argument, though, that Alabama has been tested a little bit more than Georgia has. Georgia has a rough loss to South Carolina. They had a close game against Kentucky, relatively close games against Florida, but when you look at what Alabama had to go through, a very, very tough victory at LSU with the last-second comeback, and then almost coming back against Texas A&M as well. I think when you look at those games, that probably puts them in better position if this is a close game.
I think so. They kind of know how to win, and we'll go over their schedule a little bit later in the show. Many of you don't know, but we have recently gained a, what do you call him, a research assistant?
Research extraordinaire,
exactly.
I believe, is what we gave him on his offer letter.
It's basically the Schwam, but better.
Yes. That's always bringing you the latest and greatest innovations, statistical knowledge here. That's what we do.
It's kind of what we're known for.
Yes. So we'll talk about that a little bit later on here in the show. Overall, my prediction on this one, like I said, a similar game to Alabama and LSU, back and forth, very competitive game, but if you look at the point spread, Alabama's favored by about 7.5. I think that's about right. I think maybe Alabama wins somewhere 35-28, somewhere in that range.
Okay. I actually think when you go into games like this and everybody says it's going to be a close game, watch the matchup, something just smells about Georgia. I can't get my head around Georgia. I don't think they're going to come in. They typically play pretty poorly in big games. I'm going to take Alabama, but I'm going to take them by a lot more than that. I'm going to say Alabama 28. I think Georgia puts 10 points on the board.
Yeah.
I just think Alabama jumps out early and then just takes the foot off the pedal.
We'll see. Certainly, I think it'll be a good game to watch, at least for a little while.
Right.
So, and of course, most likely, whoever wins this game is going to be in the national championship.
Oh, they're there.
Barring anything crazy, I can't really think of a scenario where it wouldn't happen.
It won't. Okay, so while we're talking about the SEC, let's talk about a little bit of controversy that came out this week. Nick Saban kind of complaining that the team who loses in the national championship game, right now the number 2 and 3 teams in the country, will not represent the SEC in the BCS Bowl.
You mean the team that loses in the SEC championship?
Championship, yeah.
Yeah,
So
okay.
Florida is pretty much a lock right now for
Right.
a BCS Bowl. I think it's
Right.
the Sugar Bowl.
Yeah, the Sugar Bowl.
So,
I mean,
what do you think about that?
Here's why that will happen. It's for monetary reasons, of course. Let's say if Alabama loses this game, how excited do you think Alabama fans are going to be to go back down to New Orleans for the Sugar Bowl? Probably not that excited. They're not going to sell as many tickets as they would to a Florida team that is on a win streak.
Well, even more than that, do you think that a 2-loss either Alabama or Georgia team would be above the number 4 ranked Gators right now? Or do you think the Gators move up?
See, that's the complication with these championship games. It's not equal.
It's not.
Only 2 teams get to play in it, so you can't make an apples-to-apples comparison. I would say if the team has 2 losses, then I would vault Florida above them, just because they didn't have the opportunity, but they didn't lose it.
So in that scenario, Florida should go.
I would say so. I think regardless of what happens, Florida will and should go to the Sugar Bowl.
So what do you think about the way the coaches handled it? Nick Saban came out and complained, and Muschamp basically said, hey, Nick, if you really want to worry about it, we'll swap places.
Yeah, well, first of all, Nick Saban, pretty hypocritical on this one, because if I remember correctly, you got into the national championship without even playing in the SEC championship last year.
What a short memory.
Yeah, so first, that's the first thing you got to look at. And really, the coaches are going to say whatever they got to say to help their team.
Exactly.
It's in their best interest.
Whether working the officials on the sideline.
Yeah, just look at all the coaching carousel with guys saying, I haven't talked to such and such team, or I'm not going anywhere. We all remember Nick Saban saying...
Speaking of Nick Saban...
Yeah,
right?
we all remember him saying that, but, coaches live in the moment. That's what they got to do to win football games. It's just how it is, So
that's pretty fair.
People can make controversy out of it, but, they're going to say whatever they got to say to help their team.
Yep, I agree.
So. All right, we're going to take a quick break to figure out what we're going to say next. On the other side, we'll talk about the Pick 10. As we mentioned, it has been extended for an extra bonus week. It's like Black Friday, just continuing on and on.
There will be riots in the street.
So we will talk about the current standings, give you our picks for the games right here after this break.
We're back, know what we're talking about. 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 We're back, here we go. No more commercials. Here we go. Always talking stuff. We're back, don't know what we're talking about, but we're back. Time for the show. We're back.
All right, David. It is time for the penultimate Pick 10 standings.
Yes. Before we go into that, I want to get to a couple of these interesting games we had last week. We did have one person pick Auburn. Not intelligently, but they picked Auburn. Grizzly McDaddy, congratulations with that one. We did have one person pick Georgia Tech, so Bama fan, good try. I know you were trying to get up there and get Max, but that one also did not happen.
You can attribute those picks at this point to people trying to make up ground.
You can. Bit. More impressively, we had 3 people pick South Carolina. So good job, Bama fan. Redeemed yourself. Max 2011 kind of negated that, and then you've got Nick Bacher. So good job on those picks, guys. Kind of going out there. Good job, Knickerbocker.
Yeah.
My goodness, in a week full of upsets, 10-0. That was pretty impressive.
I'm going to go ahead and chalk that one up to luck. I know who this is, and there's no way he's not cheating. There's got to be something.
You think he's
something
cheating?
amiss here? I don't know. I think he has one of those almanacs from the Back to the Future.
He might, because he did that to jump 1 game above where I am and 4 games above you.
Yeah, there is some shenaniganery going on here.
Probably. We had 2 people at 8-2, sport illiterate, having another strong week. Max 2011, just consistent as always.
Oh yeah,
leading the group at 7-3. You had a 6-4, and so did I. So we stayed even in the standings. You're still 3 games back, which I am sure is why we have another week.
It's because there's so many good games this week, David. Yeah. That's why.
Bama fan really selling out last week, trying to get different, and went 4-6. So,
ouch.
Right now, the current standings: Max 2011 might have 100 wins. If he gets at least 6 wins this week, he's got 94 wins.
Truly impressive.
That is impressive. We've got Ribeye just about 5 games back still. Garrett Burke, 7 games back. Bama fan slid way on back there. He's about 11 games back. And everybody else a little further back. Larry Baker continuing his climb. You remember for a long time he was down there with you, Andy, and look what he's done.
It's lonely at the bottom now.
It is. He's right there with 82 wins. So good job, Larry.
All right. Well, as mentioned, we have some surprisingly excellent games to pick from this week. Of course, the SEC Championship is one of those. But let's move on to a Thursday night matchup. We'll be starting here shortly. Louisville and Rutgers. I believe whoever wins this game, while it's not officially the Big East Championship, whoever wins this wins the Big East.
Right. And both of these teams really coming off of just great weeks last week.
Oh, yeah, just solid. Yeah. Solid.
You had Louisville losing by 3 to a terrible Connecticut team, making them 5-6 at home. Just really bad. They're really missing that star running back.
At Papa John's Stadium.
At Papa John's Stadium.
They must have been eating free pizzas.
Must have. Well, they're really missing that rushing attack from that number 1 back that went down last week.
That's true.
And then Rutgers, for no reason at all, after a pretty impressive win against Cincinnati, just laid an egg against a Pittsburgh team who lost to the Penguins. I will keep bringing that up. They lost to the Youngstown State Penguins.
Well, Rutgers was just doing their best Notre Dame impression.
Right, yeah.
So playing poorly against Pittsburgh.
They lost 27-6 though, so
that
couldn't pull that one out. Really, kind of kind of lackluster going into the end of the year. What do you see in this game?
Well, you mentioned that Louisville's rushing threat is pretty much gone, so Teddy Bridgewater, Louisville's quarterback, and a nominee along with Johnny Manziel for all-name team as far as quarterbacks go. He really carries that Louisville offense, and he's been putting up some pretty decent numbers. If you look at Rutgers' loss to Pitt, they struggled to rush as well, which has really been Louisville's weakness on defense. I don't know. I mean, this is one of those that's just kind of a toss-up to me.
It is.
Louisville was one of your darlings at the beginning of the season, so I'm going to hop on that bandwagon as well. I'm going to take Louisville.
I really appreciate you kind of supporting me in that. I am going to hop off of the Louisville bandwagon, and I'm going to pick Rutgers.
So I'm just hurtling off a cliff with no driver now.
Exactly. So let me read you some numbers that's going to make me pick this. Before the injury, here are some offensive numbers Louisville had. 344 passing, 131 rushing, 247 passing, 221 rushing. Really kind of even there. It was like
balanced.
that all year.
Yeah.
As soon as he goes down, 424 yards passing, 48 rushing.
Ouch.
374 yards passing, 27 rushing.
Ouch.
So really getting kind of one-dimensional on offense, and that'll work for a couple weeks, but defenses are going to adjust, and I really don't think you're going to be able to beat this Rutgers team one-dimensionally, so I'm going to take Rutgers.
All right, we will see. I'll probably be paying a little bit of attention to this. Louisville's coach, Charlie Strong, has been somewhat linked to the Auburn job, so we will see how that one shakes out for him tonight. Let's move on to the MAC Championship.
Actually matters for once.
Yeah, the Mid-American Conference. There's a chance that if Kent State wins this, they could get into the BCS game.
Right.
Is that correct?
Knocking out Oklahoma as the at-large.
So a little bit of intrigue to this one. Northern Illinois, Kent State, both 11-1. Both have had very impressive seasons. Northern Illinois' only loss to Iowa, an 18-17 loss.
And the first game of the year.
Yeah, first game of the year, so not a whole lot of shame in that one. Northern Illinois, I really like this team. They really get it done on the ground. Most of the time these teams putting up huge offensive numbers are solely passing based, but Northern Illinois has a rushing attack to back it up.
They do, and they can also throw. I mean, they've got a quarterback putting up Manziel-type numbers.
Yeah. So excellent offense there. One thing that might concern me about Northern Illinois, they had a very close win over a 2-9 Army team.
Right.
So if you look at that, that's kind of unsettling.
Different type of offense.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at that. You can make an argument that possibly the way Kent State has won their games is a little bit more impressive. They played Army as well, won 31-17. I hate to use a 2-9 Army team as a measuring stick, but
still,
these games you got to grasp for something.
And most of their games are more of a blowout than NIU.
Right.
NIU, yeah.
So with that said, with that super sound logic and reasoning, I'm going to go with Kent State.
Nice. All right. Well, I'm going to go Northern Illinois. So far we're 2-3.
This is going to be decision week. It has to be.
It has to be. You've got to make up some ground.
That's how it's got to be. Let's look at the Pac-12 championship, which is possibly one of the most underwhelming rematches since Alabama-LSU last year.
And not only that, they played last week.
Yeah,
can anybody get excited about this?
I mean, this should not happen. There should be some kind of rule that teams from different divisions are not allowed to play each other in the last week of the season.
Right.
Just
it ruins
because
this kind of stuff.
This is what you get. I mean, Stanford, UCLA played last week. As expected, Stanford won pretty easily, shutting down UCLA's rushing attack, just as they've done to other teams all season.
And at the same time had a very explosive rushing attack. I talked with a guy at work today. There are two different types of mistakes or problems that you can have on a football field. The first one is mental. Those are fixable. You can fix mental mistakes or problems. You cannot fix physical mistakes or problems. If you are getting manhandled on the line and blown up, there's nothing you can do about that.
See Iron Bowl 2012 if you'd like an example
that's
of
right.
that one.
So I don't see where UCLA can fix this. I think Stanford blows them out again.
And the way the Pac-12 championship works, Stanford is the home team. It's actually at their stadium.
Right.
So they got an advantage there as well. No reason to think anything's going to change this week from last week. Stanford, definitely.
I'm picking Stanford.
All right, let's move on to. We've got some Big 12 games on the agenda since Big 12 only has 10 teams now, as we say in our promo. Can't count.
Right, exactly.
We know that. But the advantage for them is that with only 10 teams, they can play a round-robin schedule, 9 conference games. Everybody plays everybody else.
Right.
I gotta admit, I like that concept.
That is pretty neat. And, hey, Big Ten, who also can't count, about to have 14 teams.
Yeah, craziness. We will certainly talk about conference realignment in the weeks to come once we are starved for content.
Right.
But as far as some of the Big 12 action, Oklahoma and TCU lining it up this week.
At TCU.
At TCU, yes. TCU's coach Gary Patterson, another one of these names that has been hot for a lot of coaching jobs. So you wonder if that's a distraction for the TCU team. Although it is every year for them.
Every year for him, because he's at a program doing so successfully where they were in the pits when he got there.
Absolutely. So trivia question, who was at TCU before Gary Patterson?
No idea.
Dennis Franchione.
Ah,
Gary Patterson was his defensive coordinator.
how about that?
Very interesting. Dennis Franchione, by the way, head coach at Texas State now, so ouch.
They were on our Pick 10.
They were. TCU has a pretty excellent rush defense. I hate to keep harping on the rushing thing, but we all know how important it is to me. But they have been vulnerable to passing teams with dynamic quarterbacks.
I believe that says Oklahoma.
Yeah,
all over
that
it.
sounds a lot like Oklahoma. And when you look at Oklahoma's 2 losses up to this point, Notre Dame, Kansas State, those losses not looking too bad right now.
Pretty acceptable losses, except for you can make an argument about Kansas State.
Yeah, but I mean, still, Kansas State's only lost 1 game.
That's true.
They're not a bad team to lose to. With that stuff in mind, I'm taking the Sooners.
Okay, well, one thing that might make you a little more wary, Oklahoma only won by 3 against Oklahoma State.
True.
They've had some close games this year. They lost to Kansas State. Even that one was close, so that could be the only thing. TCU seems to be kind of getting back on track after falling off the wagon there towards the middle of the season. They beat Texas by 7 last week. That was kind of an upset. Thursday night, kind of a weird game. So with all that being said, I think I got to pick Oklahoma.
All right, thanks for taking us round and round, coming back to the same conclusion.
Right.
I know, it happens. I do it too. All right, Oklahoma State, Baylor, another one of these Big 12 games. You mentioned Oklahoma State took Oklahoma to the wire last week, and of course we all remember Baylor's upset performance over Kansas State. Are they going to be able to repeat that?
No, I don't think they will be able to repeat that. Baylor putting up a bunch of numbers right now. Their offense really seems to be flowing. The problem with that is they're about to play somebody who runs pretty much the same thing.
That's true.
They both want scoring blowouts, and I really think this one, whoever has the ball last will win. Baylor's defense, not exactly what Oklahoma's is. Even with their big stand against Kansas State, this is not Kansas State's offense. So I think Oklahoma State kind of has their way. Oklahoma State pretty big in this one.
This is another one of those that to me is a pick 'em. I think it's going to be close. I like what you said, and whoever has the ball last is going to win, but gut feeling, going with Baylor.
All right.
So we'll see.
Put them at 7-5. Both teams at 7-5.
Yeah, pretty even. We'll see how that one works out. Let's talk about the Conference USA Championship. Another rematch of teams that have already played in the season. Central Florida and Tulsa. I'm sure everyone remembers their first meeting.
Of course. I mean, it was one of the landmark meetings.
So we don't even really need to tell you what happened in that game, right?
But, just for the sake of saying it, Tulsa lost, UCF lost by 2 points. 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. So 2 weeks ago, I know it's not quite as fresh on your mind as UCLA Stanford, so I can understand that you may have forgotten about that. If you look at the stats from that first game, once again, talking about the rushing game, Central Florida could not run the ball against Tulsa. Another one of those things that if it didn't work the first time, what makes you think it's going to change? I'm going Tulsa again.
Tulsa very balanced on offense, 252 yards passing, 202 yards rushing. Just kind of couldn't be stopped. Got whatever they wanted. However, only won by 2, and this is only a half a point matchup. Tulsa will win this one by a lot more than half a point.
I think so as well. All right, moving on to another Big 12 game. Texas and Kansas State. A lot of us thought that this was the upset potential for Kansas State. Of course, it happened a little bit early against Baylor, but do they have a chance to go down again now?
No, Texas they lost their season against TCU.
I agree.
I think Texas is out of it. Kansas State is going to be extremely upset, looking to prove to people that Baylor was a fluke. I think Texas gets drummed. It'll be more than the 10.5 that's on the spread.
I agree. I think Texas is going to struggle against a Kansas State D that's better than advertised. I'll take Kansas State big in this one as well. Let's move on to whatever conference Boise State and Nevada are in now. I have no idea because these teams are jumping around so much.
Let's say the WAC.
Yeah, let's go with that. That sounds good. Of course, Nevada, a couple years ago, 2010, they were the team that derailed Boise State's undefeated season.
Their quarterback is now very impressive looking for San Francisco.
That's true. Colin Kaepernick.
Yep.
I don't think they're going to be able to repeat it this year. Boise State, most years, better coached, better players. Nevada's losses have all been close. They have had a pretty strong rushing attack, which makes me want to pick them.
Right.
But I would say don't bet against Boise State's superior defense.
I think so. Boise State, though, losing to an unusual San Diego State and a very weak Michigan State at the beginning of the year.
That's true.
I think Nevada really keeps this one close. I'm thinking under a touchdown, but I do think Boise State finds a way to win.
All right, and finally, the Big Ten championship between the only two teams that were eligible, Nebraska and Wisconsin. Once again, we have no idea which team is from which division. We also have no idea why anybody would want to watch this game, other than to see if your pick is right, of course.
Right.
But if you look at Wisconsin, 2 straight losses to Ohio State and Penn State. I would say Nebraska, definitely not a great team, probably better than Wisconsin.
Right, and they're finding ways to win, especially late in the year. Played against a terrible Iowa team and only won 13-7, which got them in this game. You've got close victories over Penn State, Michigan State. They're just as bad as everybody else in this division. A 1-point win against Northwestern, but I agree with you. I think they're better than Wisconsin. Wisconsin really kind of lost it early in the year.
Yep, they certainly did. We'll run back through real quick, recap the picks. Both of us taking Alabama over Georgia in the SEC Championship. David hopping off the Louisville bandwagon, picking Rutgers in that matchup tonight. I'm going to stick with Charlie Strong and Louisville in that one.
Go Dominoes.
In the MAC Championship, David's going to take the Northern Illinois, whatever they are, while I will take the Kent State Golden Flashes. In the rematch Pac-12 Championship, both of us with Stanford over UCLA, both of us with Oklahoma over TCU. David's going to take Oklahoma State. I'm going to take Baylor in that Big 12 matchup. Both of us going to take Tulsa over Central Florida in the Conference USA Championship. Both of us with Kansas State over Texas. Both of us with Boise State over Nevada. And both of us with Nebraska over Wisconsin. So I believe we have differed enough for me to catch up.
If you win
necessary.
every one of them.
Yes.
Also, Northern Illinois, the Huskies.
Huskies. Okay, I will remember that for next week. I know you've all been waiting for this. On the other side, we're going to talk Auburn coaching search. Certainly some lightning rod topics floating around about that these days. We will discuss it all, tell you our predictions on the other side here on Outputting Our Coverage.
I wish you would step back from that ledge, my friend. You could cut ties with all the lies that you've been living in. And if you do not want to see me again, I would understand.
All right, welcome back into Outputting Our Coverage. If you have been living under a rock for the past week, you may not know that on Sunday afternoon, Eugene Chizik was officially relieved of his duties as Auburn head coach. At that point, wild and rampant speculation began about who Auburn's next head coach would be.
And it has not stopped since.
It has not stopped since. As usual with the coaching search, lots of conflicting information, not a whole lot to go on. A couple things I want to talk about here real quickly. Let's talk about some of the top candidates. I also want to talk about the search committee, what that might mean,
right,
and maybe a couple other things as well. But let's start with the elephant in the room for everybody, Bobby Petrino.
Right.
His name has probably been mentioned more than anyone else's thus far. Probably I would put him up in the upper likelihood of candidates, maybe along with Jimbo Fisher and Gus Malzahn at this point. Maybe throw Kirby Smart in there a little bit too. Charlie Strong, yeah. But I think a lot of signs are pointing to Bobby as the number one choice right now.
And I think that would just be a terrible, terrible pick. What do you think about it?
Well, the thing is, during the season, I was very, very against hiring Bobby Petrino until the Arkansas game. when that happened and Auburn really just started to lay some eggs, I don't want to say that your moral compass starts to get a little bit skewed, but you look at the guys who can come in and really get Auburn back to winning, and I think Bobby can do that.
Bobby is all about the offense, and he has a very specific style of offense that he runs. Do you think Auburn has the tools that can run that offense right now?
Probably not right now, but I still think even without the absolute right tools, Bobby Petrino can probably get you to 8 wins next year.
Okay, well let's say Bobby Petrino gets you to 5 wins. Do you think him being as controversial as he is as a hire and winning 5 games that he could last more than a year?
I think if 5 games, yes. 4 games, no. 4 games would probably be the limit. I think if he wins 5 games, people probably give him another year. But you mentioned before we started the show that a Bobby Petrino hire would really divide the Auburn fan base. I think that is very true. People are basically split into 2 camps. I'm trying to straddle the middle somewhere. It's very difficult,
right.
But people either love or hate the guy, and for numerous reasons. We don't need to repeat those on here, but people were not excited about the Gene Chizik hire either, for different reasons, of course.
Which, at this point, look like they make sense.
They were right, so those people were vindicated. You can say that, but once Gene Chizik started winning, everybody got behind him, and that's basically what it comes down to. You can point to the Auburn creed and say all these things, but Auburn just fired a coach who totally embodies the Auburn creed because he didn't win enough football games.
Right.
So if you're going to do that, and admittedly I was in support of that, I think it needed to happen. If you're going to do that, you have de facto admitted that what is most important to you is winning football games, and you just kind of hope in the back of your mind that Bobby Petrino is remorseful for what he's done. He's going to use this as an opportunity to improve himself. I don't know. I mean, it's a really, really tough decision to make. But if you don't hire him, you're going to have to answer questions of why did you not hire him when he goes somewhere else and wins.
It depends. Will he win somewhere else?
I think he will.
Will anybody else take a chance on him?
Somebody will take a chance on him.
In Division I?
I think so.
This year?
Yeah. Maybe not this year, but somebody will eventually.
I think
and
eventually
he will win
they
there.
will. Yeah.
He will win. So he's obviously a candidate. Jimbo Fisher probably more of a candidate now after the loss to Florida than he would have been if they kept winning, just because if they made it up to a great bowl, Florida State probably wants to keep him a little bit more.
I still think that Jimbo Fisher is the least likely candidate.
Yeah, and I'm not so sure that he would be a great hire for Auburn either. Gus Malzahn, not super excited about that possibility either, just from a standpoint of discipline. Right. I think Auburn definitely needs someone to come in that can be a strict disciplinarian.
Charlie Strong, I think, would be the best fit right now.
Yeah, I think he would be a good fit. I'm not sure it's going to happen. I just haven't heard a whole lot of positive talk about that, but I don't know. We'll see. One thing I wanted to talk about, the search committee. Obviously, Jay Jacobs, not at least in public perception, getting to make this hire on his own again. There's a search committee comprised of himself, Pat Sullivan, Bo Jackson, and another former player, Matt Crawford, who was a CEO of several medical-related companies. Here's my theory. You can tell me if I'm wrong or not. The search committee is there. I heard somebody describe it on a radio show last night as window dressing.
To displace blame.
Yes, and basically, when Auburn hires Bobby Petrino, you'll be able, or Jay Jacobs will be able to point and say, look, Pat Sullivan and Bo Jackson, 2 of the most beloved Auburn players in history, endorsed this hire. They're behind him. You should get behind him as well. That's my theory. I don't know.
I think that makes sense. Here's my question. If I was Jay Jacobs, do you know what my committee would look like?
Myself in the unemployment line?
No. It would be one person, and it would be Charles Barkley. Barkley.
He wants Petrino.
Charles Barkley would pick my coach, and he would live with it.
Yeah, well, to be fair, Charles Barkley supported Turner Gill last go around.
That's true.
You got to take that with a grain of salt. But really, the interesting thing about this is, if we're honest, Jay Jacobs should not still have his job.
Oh, no, and we've been saying that since the middle of the season. There should
be another athletic director running this. And, I'm going to make somewhat of a bold prediction here. I think Jay Jacobs probably won't be around too much longer. He may survive here for a little while, but I think there may already be a plan in place to replace him, and I'm wondering if that guy is Matt Crawford.
Maybe. He already looks like he's in over his head. So.
Yeah, so we will see how that one goes. Certainly a lot of news will be coming out here about the Auburn coaching search. I'll try to get some blog posts up about it or something, but we'll see.
We'll try to talk about all the coaching availabilities in the SEC,
Yes.
but I do want to get to this. Our crack research team went and actually made this really neat spreadsheet. I had been talking to you before the show about this. Everybody just assumes that the winner of Alabama-Georgia is probably going to destroy Notre Dame, and I'm typically on that side. However, when looking at their schedules, Notre Dame actually probably has an edge.
Yeah, it's quite surprising when you look at the numbers.
Yeah, we went and took their BCS rank when they played them, the current rank that they have, and the Sarragan rating, and the total Sarragan rating. The lowest is the lower you are, the better, because you want to play teams who are rated 1 or 2 or 3.
Right. That kind of stuff is used pretty frequently in basketball. Those types of ratings that rank every team. So
the Sarragan rank for Notre Dame season is at 616. Can you guess where Alabama, Georgia are?
Surely they must be lower, right? They must have better schedules.
No, they are actually a pretty good bit higher. Alabama's is a 766, and Georgia's is a 773. So Notre Dame has the toughest schedule according to that number. The one that really hurt Alabama was Western Carolina at 204th. So that accounted for a chunk of theirs. But still, Notre Dame, it appears that they're playing some quality opponents. Just to throw this out there, we were talking about Florida earlier. You want to know what Florida's Sarragan rating is?
I'm going to guess that it surely must be higher than Alabama and Georgia's as well, right?
539.
Wow.
It's actually lower than Notre Dame's. So
lowest of the bunch. Very interesting.
Florida, a really tough schedule.
Well, I did hear something, Auburn fans, if you want to feel somewhat good about the Iron Bowl, you can at least take solace in the fact that Auburn hurt Alabama's strength of schedule. So
They did, right.
At least you got that going for you.
Let's put it this way. Western Kentucky, Sarragan ranking 82. Auburn, 84.
Ouch.
So
when you look at it that way, it just makes you want to go home and just cry.
Missouri's rating, 43.
Ouch. Wow.
So real quick, what do you think, if you were a coach out there on the market today, what is the most attractive job to you?
It's Auburn. No question asked. I mean, people are trying to say...
Now, is that just because you're an Auburn fan?
No, it's not. People are saying that Tennessee is a better job than Auburn.
I think it's a much better job.
Many years that would be true, but with what's going on there right now, with their money problems, with the fact that they actually do have NCAA probation and violations that have occurred, people are talking about all this stuff with Auburn. None of it's been proven. None of it's going to happen.
Tennessee's not under probation right now.
Well, they had the violations and stuff come down. That stuff has actually happened. And then you look at the fact that Tennessee does not have as good of players as Auburn does right now.
I think you could much more easily go into Tennessee and win tomorrow than you could Auburn.
I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens next year. But I think right now Auburn is the best job out there.
Okay.
Even with all the stuff floating around, the tools are there in place for Auburn to be good again relatively quickly.
I'll have to disagree, but we'll talk about that some other time.
Yes, we will agree to disagree on that one. We'll be back next week here on Outputting Our Coverage. We might have a new Auburn coach or some new other coaches to talk about as well. We'll have the bowl schedule to run down. There have been rumors of a bowl pick'em as well. That may even happen here.
That is going to happen.
Officially sanctioned Outputting Our Coverage bowl pick'em.
And I'm going to go perfect in it.
Yes, so be sure to stay tuned for that one. We will see you here next week on Outputting Our Coverage.
Thank you.